Hello and welcome everybody to this video. My name is Shepherd's Eagle. I'm League of Legends team coach in the making, and in this video I'm gonna specifically show you a task, or better to say a practice routine, how to get the mental edge in. Mental edge, I talked about this in two other videos, is very important in League of Legends pro play, in every other esports pro play too, but especially in League of Legends, since we all know the history of that game and the world's history. So, got the coffee going, let's go. Basically, what I want to start with is I found an interesting article from the Queensland University of Technology. They made a study about basically comparing like real Olympic athletes with esports pro players. And what they found out, I think, is pretty interesting, because the mental toughness of either of those athletes is basically the same. Like the esports players, the pro players, can be considered real athletes because they require the same mental toughness, the mental edge to perform well under pressure. And I think this is totally normal and natural because basically, of course, you sit in front of a PC, play a computer game, whatever it is, which game it is, but when you go into a tournament, it's a real event, and the competitiveness there is basically the same as in, for example, Olympia. Like the real Olympic athletes compete the same way. Like it's the same amount of stuff is at stake for them as in esports. Maybe it's a little bit more money, whatever, but basically it's the same. So if you want to read a little bit more about this, I really recommend reading this article. It's from sciencedaily.com. I can really recommend reading it if you want to understand that a little bit deeper. I'm gonna go over to something I was talking about in the last video, this little thing here. I know it's not the prettiest drawing of mine, but it really delivers well what I want to show here with the mental edge. So basically, I talked about this in a different video. If you want to understand this a little bit deeper, please watch that video. To make it real short now, the emotional fortitude basically is the basic thing every player has to control to really perform under pressure, perform well under pressure. Because basically, if you sit around the whole day playing a game, playing with your team, with your friends, whatever it is, and practicing, you get real good, like your challenger tier, the top challenger tier, and you think like, okay, I can beat everybody here. It's perfect, like I'm prepared. No, you're not prepared at all. Like if you go into a tournament, your basic skills as a player, your mechanical skills, your macro knowledge, it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is basically your emotional fortitude and the mental edge you got, that you bring into the tournament. Because as this drawing here explains, very easy to see, processable information means the amount of information a player can work with in a very short period of time. Like playing the game, and you get all the information, like what your teammates tell you, what you see on the map, what's happening in your lane, what's with the items and all that stuff. The more information you can process as a player to make a good decision in game, for example, the better it's gonna turn out. Mechanical skills and macro skills I won't explain here because they are pretty obvious. If you don't know them, of course, please watch the other video. But basically this thing here, the mental edge, this comes to play when you go into a tournament, because the emotional fortitude is basically comparable with your comfort zone. So if you're comfortable in your gaming house, for example, or at home, if you play the game with the guys you know, and you know you're just like, oh, I have my little cookies here and my coffee going and everything is easy, like no one's watching me from behind or something, maybe the coach is coming around for some information, whatever it is, comfortable. You go on the stage, for example, or you go into a tournament and everyone is watching you and judging you and expecting a lot of things from you, like your comfort zone just gets blown away. Like it's out of the window instantly. So the emotional fortitude is cracked. And this is what this here shows pretty well. And then your mental edge comes in. If your mental edge is strong enough to withstand that pressure that you're going into, your emotional fortitude is not gonna get cracked, or at least not that hard. And you won't have such an influence on the rest of your skills and your gameplay. So in this video I promised I'm gonna show you a practice routine or a task, how you can actually train or practice this mental edge thing. Because, as I said, there are plenty of teams out there who already showed that if you have the mental edge, if you have the stronger mental edge than your opponent, you can take the win. Even though they might be mechanically better than you, normally. But, as I said, mental edge gives you the edge. It's pretty simple. So, I have to say, mental edge training is not something you get deep inside of the game. Like, you cannot play the game and think that your mental edge is gonna grow. Not gonna happen. So you need to practice that outside of the game in real life, since an event also happens in real life. Like, pressure situations are hard to force in basically your training method inside of the game. So, I want to jump over to this thing here. Sorry. Looks a little bit funny, I know, but let me explain first. Like, a real pressure situation in real life, you have to force. You cannot just click and it's there. You know, it's not like sitting around, I want to have pressure. Oh, alright, here you got pressure. It doesn't work like that, you know. So, basically, you can, for example, compare that if you go on stage, it's like going on a date. Simple as that. If you go to a date which, where you meet a person you are really interested in, you are like, whew, like, okay, I don't want to mess this up. Like, you get a little bit shaky, maybe, you know, you think a lot about what you're gonna say, what you're gonna do, so you don't look stupid or sound stupid or anything. And this is basically how you can imagine going into a tournament too. Like, oh, I don't want to mess up this play, or I don't want to disappoint my teammates, I want to be at peak performance, or damn, I want to really get that win, or whatever it is. Basically, it's a lot like a date. You can, of course, if you have the possibilities as a team, just force every player into a date and see how they do, but I would rather recommend a little more simple task, because it's easier to prepare, of course, since the other one is not too bad either. But let's go into the kitchen, basically. Like, as a coach, you have to not just work on basically your mental state or how your players do in the game, but also on on the physical state of the players. So eat healthy, get your sleep in, have a break between the games. Like, basically that's gonna improve your behavior as a player and your ability to really be consistent in the game. That's something basic, of course. So let's go into the kitchen, as I said, and we're gonna make this challenging, because we're gonna create a real pressure situation here. So your players, for example, have to cook any meal. You can decide that before you go into the task, you should. And you're gonna get the ingredients fresh, please, and not something already prepared. Like, the players have to prepare everything themselves. You can already see we're gonna have some funny stuff going on there. So how that works is basically, you put all your players into the kitchen, you give them basically the meal they have to cook, and it doesn't matter at all if your players can cook, have experience in cooking, know how to do something, they have to figure a way. Because why we do this in a tournament, basically you don't know at any point how good your enemy is prepared for you. So you're gonna have some points of surprise in the game anyways. So it's better that you just go in for worst case scenario and be prepared for that, so you can handle it, than rather than going into something like I do know up until that point what I can do, but everything above I don't know what's gonna happen. So basically in games you see that a lot of times that this kind of attitude loses some teams' games. Not all, not a lot, but it happens. But I don't want to talk about the worst case scenario, I just want to prepare you for that. So there are two rules. First rule, no matter how this meal turns out, the players have to eat it. So they got a little bit of ambition to do good here and not just to mess around and cook anything which doesn't even taste good. And, sorry. Second thing is, each player has to do his own task. Like, nobody can just stand around and stare at the others doing some stuff. If that happens, the player has to be really, like, put back to his task by the rest of his team. This is the thing. The team has his own responsibility for everybody. Like, no one is gonna influence them from the outside and say like, hey, do this or that and don't stand around or something. If he stands around, the others are gonna suffer from that, and the task is not gonna be completed in time, because we have time limits too. So give the players, for example, if you cleared up the situation and cleared up which meal they're gonna have to cook, give them 1 minute, only 1 minute, to evaluate who is gonna basically do which task. Like, only 1 minute, and then they immediately have to start. Put a timer on the time you set for them to finish the meal or to get the meal cooked at some point. If you have a meal that takes a long time to cook, you can basically set the time limit for the time until what point they have to be ready so it can cook. Doesn't matter what you're gonna cook. Just have to adjust there a little bit, of course. And I don't want to dive in too deep because it's an example task. It works, but you can do it in different varieties, of course. You don't have to focus on just cooking. So, those two rules. As I said, the players have to eat it. Second rule, every player has his own task to do, and they cannot go over the time limit. So, then you can put it like that. If the players are able to, like, really... Sorry? To really evaluate, like, I'm gonna do this task, that task, and they are gonna do those tasks. So they got their tasks, and then they have to get to the meal. Like this is the ultimate goal. You can put it like this. If you have players who know a little bit about cooking and who can already communicate well with each other, you can put it in different levels. So first level is totally for a team that has no idea how to cook and doesn't communicate too well. So you can just go like, okay guys, the rules are to make this challenging. No knives at all. You can put everything else, like a spoon or whatever you got, a fork, I don't care, but no knives. So it's challenging, they have to be creative at some point. And you can set the time limit on maybe 30 minutes if you got a meal that fits that time. Like if you, for example, would have a meal that takes like 45 minutes to cook, set the timer on 30 minutes, so it gets a little bit challenging. If your players are good doing that, put it up there. Level 2, no knives, time limit 20 minutes for example, a recipe that takes 45 minutes, and no recipe. Like, just tell the players what they have to do, show them a picture of maybe the finished meal, how it should look, and let them have their fun. Let them try to just figure out how to cook that meal. They have to eat it at some point. It doesn't have to look exactly like it should on the photo or whatever, but it should be very, very close, and it should taste okay, I would say. And level 3, this is then the ultimate level. Like, you have the same rules, no knives, you have just a time limit of 15 minutes, no recipe, and no communication in the first 10 minutes. This is crucial. Like, whatever practice routine you're gonna invent to your team, if it's cooking, if it's going out, speaking to foreign people or whatever it is, you just have to really work around that communication thing. Because the players see it as a luxury just to say what they think in game, for example. And if you see how they work together when they just cannot talk to each other, like they can do signs or whatever you want, like with your body language, you can do stuff. It's okay, let them do it. But don't let them talk for the first 10 minutes of this challenge. You can do that with the 30 minutes time limit too. It doesn't matter. Like, for 10 minutes, don't talk. They can evaluate their tasks, who's gonna do which task in the first minute, as I said, but afterwards, for 10 minutes, no communication at all. Just like body language and like some pointings or stuff. That's okay. And then just observe what your players are gonna do, because this is a real challenge, and they are gonna really get back to the point where they like appreciate the luxury of just telling each other the really like important information they need, because they're gonna be forced into a situation where they have to work as a team but not communicate as a team, and they're gonna be like, okay, how do I figure out any other way? Maybe the players interact a little bit different, and interact the way that the others should know what they are thinking, even though they can't tell them. So this gives you an advantage when you get back into game, because if you see the behavior of your players and you learn a little bit of how players behave inside of the game, you can basically a little bit go into the direction that you already know what your player is thinking even before he says it. And the real good teams already got that figured out at some point, but it's something you have to work on. Like, it's not just naturally there by being with each other. So yeah. And afterwards, of course, the players have to eat the meal, and you can have a little bit fun there. So the pressure gets down a little bit. But this is something you really have to practice in real life situations, something you cannot practice in the game. And to come to the point finally, like what this creates in a team and what are the advantages of such practice routines. Basically, this forces the players into a pressure situation where they have to build their own mental fortitude. Like, they cannot afford to break down in this thing or anything because they're gonna pull the whole team with them. So if you want to make it a little bit more interesting, you can like tell the players, okay, you're gonna get punished at some point if you don't complete this task, this challenge, whatever. That's up to you. Depends a little bit on the emotional strength of your players, and they have to learn to control their emotions as well. Like, there are gonna be some points at tasks like this where the players are gonna struggle and be like, why do I do this, or can I make it at some point? Like, am I really helpful to the other guys at some point? They're gonna struggle at some things. So they have to really build that emotional trust in each other and the emotional strength for themselves. Other advantages are, of course, like trusting their teammates to do their task, like that they really deliver, and that if you do your task, you know that your teammates are gonna do theirs, and in the end you're gonna get the whole picture together, or the meal together, whatever it is. Recognizing weak spots when someone is struggling is very important, because a lot of players, they feel a little bit ashamed when they don't deliver in game. Like, they don't really feel good then, or want to talk about it too much or anything, and the rest of the team sometimes has a hard time recognizing that one of their players is really struggling, and they are like, hey dude, like, are you okay? And then suddenly he's 0-3 and they are, what happened, what did you do, like, can we help you somewhere or something at some point? And then most of the time it's already too late. So recognizing weak spots in a team sorry, can really be helpful just in a pressure situation like this, first to solve the problem and to get the team going as 5, for example, again, so you don't fall behind, like in time in cooking the meal or in the game, falling behind your opponents, and so on. So third thing to mention is communicating effectively. Like, in such a short period of time, if you have such a task, like without any recipe to cook a meal that you don't know how it's done, you have to communicate really well to basically be on the same page to finish a meal. Like, that in some point, if you don't communicate well, for example, you're gonna have the situation where some dude is like cutting how do you say it? Cutting potatoes or anything, whatever it is, and the other one is already like standing at the pot and waiting for it, and it's like, dude, are you gonna be finished at some point, or whatever it is, you know? So communicating effectively for a short period of time, that you get the really, really important information and the right information, like the one that's really relevant and that helps all of the players. Fourth point, getting creative. Very simple. For example, if you don't have knives but you have to cut a lot of stuff, you have to find out how you're gonna cut it if you don't have a knife. Let them have their fun. Let them be creative. It's gonna transfer into the game, I promise. So they get creative in different situations, and in complications where they normally would struggle a lot, they get a little bit more creative, and at some point maybe they can turn it around or do something the opponent doesn't expect. Last point, not allowing thoughts like, this is too big of a task, or I can't do this, or oh, now it's too late. Thoughts like that are killer. Like, they really kill a player and a team in a competitive tournament, like completely. I think, even though I don't like it that way, but it is that Fnatic, for example, have that kind of mentality for years now. I don't know what's going on in their team. I don't know where it's coming from, because I'm not there. Of course, I can not evaluate that from the outside. But I think Fnatic is a pretty good example of a team that doesn't have the right thoughts at tournaments. Like they really, or even outside of tournaments, I don't know what they think, of course. But the way the players talk in interviews, or the way Reckless expresses on stage, and all that stuff. I don't want to put too much focus on Reckless here, don't get me wrong. Like, it's a team thing. Like, if you have thoughts like that, it always impacts the whole team. It doesn't stay on one player. So, basically, those 5 points are the advantages you get of it. The task is really simple. It's something you could do like once or twice a week if you want to put it, if you're going to a tournament and you want to really push that mental edge a little bit more, you can also do it twice or 3 times a week. So yeah, basically that's about it. I hope you could follow me here up until that point. It's a very, very important topic, and well, if you are interested in communicating with me, maybe getting to know me a little bit more, or if you want me to coach your team, whatever it is, please just go to shepherdseagle@gmail.com. Write me an email. I'm open for any offer, and if you have just a simple question, post in comments below, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, because I'm gonna do videos daily now. Doesn't matter which day of the week, I'm gonna put up a video every day, even Sundays. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you have a great day or a great evening from wherever you're watching or whenever you're watching, and take care. Love and respect for you guys. Bye bye.